US midterms. Can the country resolve its divisions? Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
The United States of America. Sinister signs appear between red lines as 50 stars have all collided. But as the flag entwines, the standard declines, and a nation is now divided. Yes, Clergyman Pete, it seems that the midterm elections have once again reinforced some of the systemic problems of the United States. And whilst we can see that it appears that Joe Biden will still remain in control to have power in the Senate, it doesn't get away from some of the underlying issues that the United States have faced in recent times. The economy still divided. People are still concerned about their jobs. The Roe versus Wade situation and about the rights there, and many, many other things which we want to talk about. Clergyman Pete, I ask you, what should the United States be doing to resolve these big divisions?
Yes, I think that the issue with the United States being divided has been, Mr. Mark, a long-standing issue, but it's grown in recent years. And I think what's happened is we have a disconnect from between the politicians who are running the show and the people. And I would put down as one of the biggest issues the fact that people, particularly working class people, are not being represented. I guess in the US they might be called middle class people, but the workers are not being represented. Now, we found in the past that Donald Trump, with his populist approach, was appealing to people from working class, middle class. But you also had Bernie Sanders on the left, also appealing to them and noting the same sort of issues that were problems, things like big business having too much say over government, that sort of thing. They had different solutions, but they were addressing the same problems. But that isn't what the two parties represent. Both Democrats and Republicans are just different flavors of the same machine, if you like. In other words, both parties are in hock to big business, would be a different way to put it. So you see that both parties try and use these different sides, the left wing of Bernie Sanders, the right wing of Donald Trump, in order to win elections. But they've no intention of actually doing anything apart from a scattergun approach of, choosing certain policies or certain, I suppose, taking up certain positions to appease certain voter blocks. But actually what they do, well, they seem to be just in it for themselves. And so the divisions just grow and grow as they're stirred up by the different political parties. The issues are identified, but nothing's done about them. So the divisions grow wider and wider.
Well, when I look at the map of the United States, I sort of see it like a sort of bit like a sandwich, in the sense that, it's very democratic on the west and sort of on the east, and the big red part through the Republican middle. It's not exact, of course, but the point here is that it is a very divided nation. Now, as we speak at the point of broadcast, that Nevada and Georgia are still to declare. In fact, Georgia is going to go into a runoff. So the matter lingers on. But either way, irrespective of the outcomes here, the question ultimately is that we've got something on the horizon, which is that even if Joe Biden does remain as somebody who is not a lame duck, because that was the concern for many of the Democrats going into this process, he seems to have fared a little bit better. But is he now in a better place to run again for the United States as a president? Would he come up against, say, for example, Donald Trump? Similarly, again, this point about divisions, though, is he best placed to be able to try and unify the nation, the collective, or is somebody else better placed to do this? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, here are my thoughts. I think it's somebody else in both cases. I don't think either Trump or Biden are in the right position to unite the nation. But I think the way to unite it, this is what I believe, it's based on the Constitution of the United States. The way that it's set up is this: there are different states in the United States, and they have different cultures, different ideas, different ways to run things. They run together as a federation of states, which have needs and a certain a certain minimal part of their culture is the same, and therefore they can unite together. United States, try to have a United States of Europe, too divided, but within the American United States, there's a possibility if the different states are allowed to run things their own way. Take, for example, all the issues over the Roe versus Wade, the allowing abortion decision that was reversed.
He's choking on the American sandwich, folks. If you're wondering what's going on.
It always happens to me. I get so choked up talking about how American
Joe Biden.
Yes, Joe Biden. I love him so much. Yeah, the issue of whether abortion is a human right and should be allowed, it can be found in the Constitution, which was the Roe v. Wade decision, famous decision, which was later, of course, amended. But still the fundamental right stayed until recently when it was overturned. And this was used by the Democrats to push against the Republicans. It's used, in other words, as a cudgel to beat down the opposition, but it ended up being more than that. It ended up not being a cudgel just beating the opposition. It was as though it was putting down a great big fissure between the two. It was making the divisions wider, and they were supported, of course, by the mainstream media. And I say, of course, because they do seem to be beholden to them, because big business is behind them. Now, that being the case, I think that it doesn't matter who's president in the end, as long as you have that sort of cultural hold by the Democrats on the left and a part of the Republican Party, who are also beholden to big business, etc., who seem to have this same agenda. As to why, that's a topic for another episode, but it is there, and it's going to cause division because it's been manipulated. The propaganda is there, causing people to hate each other on either side, particularly things like the abortion issue, but there are others, other cultural issues like transgenderism, etc., which were used very much in these midterms elections to cause division, and they're going to continue unless people are allowed to simply make decisions state by state. And that is what the reversal of Roe v. Wade was. It was a return of the decision. It was actually a removal of that law saying you had to allow abortion across all the states to be made on a state-by-state basis. I think once it returns to that, when government gets smaller and doesn't interfere so much, then the different states, which have their different cultures and therefore different moral attitudes, will be able to make decisions for themselves on economic issues too. And that's what we need to return to. But I think it's going to take some time to get that far. I don't think it can be done in one election. However, I think that there is a way to do it. Here's now, Mark, this is going to cause a bit of division amongst our listeners, I think. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'll just say it. You'll be surprised. But I do have an opinion on this. I think it's a long-term process of gradually of changing the way that the government operates by making the government smaller and smaller. You can't do it in one go because otherwise you're going to take away certain government programs which are needed at the moment, etc., etc. You need to make the federal government smaller and interfere less and hand things back to the states, which will take time. But I believe in order to do that, you need to break the control of the mainstream media, and in order to do that, you need a president who is able to cut through that and go straight through social media, who has through social media to the people. You need a president with a big enough personality to force changes through. And so I think the first step is to vote Donald Trump back in as president.
Well, I'm sure that there's lots of people who've either spluttered all over their coffee and or probably choked on their American sandwich. But either way, there's one thing that I just want to say as a closeout to this is that the midterm elections again has definitely have brought another point, which is that a lot of businesses are also divided in terms of where the efforts are going. And then if we think about what the midterm elections have done, naturally they're focused on internal matters, quite rightly so. What I'm also curious about is it paving the way to the future of what it means from an international perspective. Now, the United States is so significant to the economy of nations, to the investment of businesses, individuals, organizations, and so on. One thing I did want to ask you, Clergyman Pete, I mean, I never really saw much about the international side of things, and I don't just mean at some of the, dare I say, the atrocities and issues that are happening around the world. We've seen the Ukraine issue, but that's a subject in itself. But just purely on the foreign affairs matter, that seemed to have got lost to me. Just want to get your take on this.
You talk about in the election campaign, it did seem to be lost, and I think this is the reason that I think there were two reasons. One is the actual leadership of the two parties, the Republicans, the old guard, not Trump, who is a leader, but not technically isn't. He has no office, but he's a leader to some who have loyalty to him. But the actual leadership of the Republicans and the Democratic parties are both in favour of the policies that are being pursued. For example, in Ukraine, the disastrous policies trying to get a regime change in Russia by using the crisis in Ukraine. All that, it seems to be that they agree. So that was left out. But the other side is this: the main plank of each of the campaigns seemed to be, don't vote for the other guy. It was negative campaigning at its finest across the states. I mean, not in every case, but just generally speaking, there wasn't a positive vision going forward for the United States in any part, including domestic policy. So talking about how it's faring abroad, that was just farther from the concerns, other than to simply criticize Biden for what he'd done. For example, in his withdrawal from Afghanistan. But those were just fleeting mentions. Why? Because they just wanted to bash the person and not the policy.
Let's unify everybody and ask their opinions. Let's get the collective.
I'm not sure that's going to be that unifying.
Why don't we ask our glorious listeners, what do they think about the United States? What do they think of the midterm elections? And more importantly, what do they think of the United States going forward? I think it's crucial that we get to hear from them. Why not post a comment on markandpete.com?
Yeah, go to markandpete.com. Make sure you're subscribed. You can leave a comment there. Make sure it's particularly angry, bigoted, and vituperative. And we may even comment on it. Use your comment in a future episode. But that's it from Mark and myself, I know. Catch you next time.